vou passar aqui a palavra ao meu colega Dirk Loyens para apresentar o nosso último orador aqui da parte da manhã. Dirk, tens a palavra.
Bom dia a todos. Eu tenho o prazer de apresentar o professor Shujoy Chakraborty. O professor Shujoy estudou arquitetura na Índia para depois vir para a Europa e iniciar-se no campo de design, fazendo um master no Domus Academy. Ele depois fez o seu doutoramento no Politecnico de Milano e começou a trabalhar na indústria no Whirlpool Europe, não é? Num projeto que é especificamente virado para o shape coding de ecoeficiência, que na altura era uma tentativa de ter eletrodomésticos que tenha que comunicava a sua ecoeficiência, não é? Depois de trabalhar quase 3 anos no Whirlpool, ele voltou para a academia e começou a dar aulas em Design Process Theory no Politecnico de Milano. E depois, uma pequena passagem pelo Instituto Nacional de Design na Índia. Está agora, voltou não, mas foi para a Universidade da Madeira, onde ele neste momento é diretor do curso de licenciatura e de mestrado em design. Para além destas suas funções académicas, o Shujoy também é o investigador principal num projeto financiado pela ciência sobre o design e desenvolvimento de uma máscara FFP2 100% biodegradável. O projeto chama-se Biomask. Como não podíamos esperar outra coisa, é baseado em fibras de banana, se não fosse na madeira. E o professor Shujoy vai apresentar agora a grande parte da sua investigação pedagógica em Shape Coding Companion Robots, que é um projeto que iniciou há 4 anos e que recentemente tomou um rumo bastante interessante com o aparecimento de ferramentas de inteligência artificial como o DALL-E, o Midjourney e o Stable Diffusion. Shujoy, por favor. It's all yours.
Obrigado. Eu estou aqui no Porto, então eu já estava a viajar até o Porto, então aproveitei também para visitar Duck aqui. Pronto, eu vou fazer uma apresentação sobre o meu trabalho de pedagogia que inicio em Universidade da Madeira, mas também tive alguma ligação com exata patrocínios para desenvolver essa pedagogia e pronto, vou tentar dar alguma ligação com o meu trabalho de investigação e o meu trabalho de aulas. Então, às vezes preciso explicar alguns conceitos em inglês, porque tenho algumas limitações no meu português para explicar coisas científicas. Não sei se isso vai ser um problema ou não. Ok, pronto. Muito obrigado. Então, vai ser um bocadinho bilingual. Preciso partilhar o meu ecrã. Já vou iniciar a partilha. É assim, acho que já está aqui. Oi. Ok. Estamos pronto. Como o professor Dirk já explicou, que o meu background início da arquitetura, então eu passei depois para design do produto e acabei com o doutoramento em design engineering. Então tenho um perfil interdisciplinar. Então eu estou a tentar sempre dar alguma perspectiva interdisciplinar nas minhas aulas na Universidade da Madeira, aqui na Porto também. E pronto, isto foi o título do meu talk hoje. Impact of Generative Artificial Intelligence on Product Design, Reimagining the Role of the Classical Designer in Industry 4.0. Então, eu vou falar muito sobre Indústria 4.0, Generative AI, que tem ferramentas tipo DALL-E, Midjourney, Text-to-Image AI tools. E que implica isso para nós, como professores de design, especificamente design do produto, e para os alunos, que agora estão em fase de treinamento dentro da universidade. Então, como é que podemos, precisamos alterar nossa pedagogia para preparar os alunos a entrar nesse novo mundo, Brave New World. É assim. Pronto. Já temos algumas imagens do Drive, então, ou para mais. Agora, minha apresentação está dividida em 6 capítulos. Vou iniciar com alguma base de referências, ok? Quais são minhas referências fundamentais para construir essa apresentação? Essa apresentação, em fato, é um artigo, um paper, research paper, que eu estou a escrever com DER. Então, o que estou a dar hoje é algumas reflexões sobre os conhecimentos que nós estamos desenvolvendo nesse artigo que estamos a escrever, desde 4 anos. Então, já está 4 anos que estamos a desenvolver esse trabalho. Pronto. So, the first reference, Design in Tech Report. So, the fundamental understanding here is what is computational design and what is classical design. So I make a reference to John Maeda, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Okay. If I say, se tu dizer alguma coisa que as pessoas não estão a seguir, pode interferir ou pode fazer alguma pergunta. So what means classical designer? Classical designer is a person who is trained on classical tools, design by drawing, so referring to design process and design methods. John Chris Jones, 1970s, the seminal works. So problem solving, analysis, synthesis, normally designers are trained on that. Now, when we pass to computational design, John Maeda claims that computational designers have to prepare for a fundamentally different kind of design practice, which is based on computational tools and it's virtual. There is no physical manifestation of this design. So it is largely based in the world of the internet, in the world of informatics and interactive technologies. So does this mean that classical designers, I am a classical designer, eu sou classical designer, o meu treinamento foi ferramentas para desenhar, construção de maquetes, falamos, comunicações, construir apresentações, assim. So classical designers do this kind of thing, but computational designers, they write code, they develop software, but they also develop products. Their products are not physical, they are virtual. So we have to adapt the product design pedagogy to this new reality. So here is a reference. I took some screenshots from the internet. So all the images in this presentation are not mine. I've taken them from the internet. So for copyright issues, I think it's fair use, academic use. They are not for commercial purpose. So I think it's fair use. Here is the division of the world. So the physical world, the organizational world, and then the informatic or digital world. This is what John Maeda proposes. So we start our training in the physical world. I think my generation was the last, in my honest opinion, to be trained in the physical world, classical design, which was already late 90s and early 2000s, so beginning of the 21st century. Then starting Gen Z, I think what is 2000 onwards, the commercial world at least has transitioned into digital design, so computational design. And the students we have in the university now are definitely more trained for computational tools than classical tools. At least their mentality is more oriented in that. So we have to prepare ourselves as teachers. I think we have to update ourselves to align with this new psychology of the student. So the second fundamental reference is aspects of research. So since the conference is about investigation, about design, so design related investigation, we have 3 kinds of design investigation, okay, that I always cite in my classes. So, or it's research for design, where we are researching on processes and practice of design. This is different than research into design, which is making design into a science. This kind of research exists mostly in universities and research units, where we study process, tools, and how the practice of design can benefit from introducing more scientific approach into creative work. And then there is research through design, which is actually research that is conducted by actually building things, building artifacts. The end output is not always an article, but is actually an artifact in itself. And the artifact itself, whether it's physical or virtual, so classical or computational, it's a medium of study. So it is very much practice-led instead of literature-led, and it is very much grounded in a project, actual project. So therefore, I cite a project that I have developed in my pedagogy, which is of a specific product category, robotics, which I think was a category that emerged through my participation in the LARSIS research unit, which is in Technico, based in Technico, which is a lab of robotics and systems engineering. So I came into close contact with professors who are working in the area of artificial intelligence, machine learning, natural language processing, and of course, robotics. And I, as a designer, start to talk with them and understood that there is a huge lacune, a huge gap of knowledge where designers are fundamentally not entering, because we don't understand so well these concepts, robotics, artificial intelligence, and engineers are developing this without their expertise on aesthetics. So I realized this is an opportunity. So research through design, practice-led, I develop pedagogic projects. And through the learning of the pedagogic projects, which are always design projects of students, we learn if our scientific knowledge can be upgraded through the output that students are producing. So the process I follow in this presentation, it's a classical model, which is analysis synthesis. I will present you in the next chapter an analysis, a broad literature analysis. Then I will present you a synthesis, and then I will present you an insight and final discussion to close the talk. Okay, so let's go into the analysis. So what is happening here? What is the history of human development? Let's start with understanding the Human Civilization Project. So if you look at this website, which is very interesting, Our World in Data, I will go into the internet. So here we can see every invention that was ever built by our species. So it's a 10,000-year map, linear map. Okay, we can zoom in and we can see the first invention we have here is the first tool used by our ancestors. So here it's when we start to understand that we can light a fire, we can refashion pieces of wood, pieces of bone, animal pieces, remains from their bodies to make fashion tools. Tools means artifacts that help us achieve a purpose, right? So reduce mechanical effort. So the idea of tools is born. Then we fast forward 1 million years and first controlled use of fire and cooking. And then we fast forward to 10,000 years before Christ, and we have the agricultural revolution. And then we fast forward to 1,000 years and we have the beginning of the Iron Age. And then we come more or less to contemporary world. So let's say the 19th century, and we have the first vaccine. And then you see that the density of inventions becomes very, very close. Okay, so here in 1800s, 1850s, let's put it more or less, right? It's debatable. First industrial revolution begins. Okay, and then you see the explosion of what we call machines. Okay, engineered artifacts that are designed to reduce human effort by manipulating natural phenomena. So the steam engine is born, camera is born, photography, long range communication, telegraph, and then it's an explosion of lot of industry 1.0, industry 2.0 inventions. The automobile is invented, television, and then we are slowly going towards industry 3.0, which means the internet is arriving, 1970s, computers, telecommunications, smartphones, and now finally we arrive to industry 4.0, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, mRNA vaccines. And where are we going from here? This is where we are now. So the humanity is expanding into space. So we become an interplanetary species, excuse me. So we go to industry 5.0, which is going to be about biotechnology and solving the concept the problem of disease and death, so elongation of human life. Okay, so and then we don't know. After 2200, there is no prediction. We don't know how far we will go. Okay, so this is an interesting model, I thought, that places us as product designers, because ultimately these are all products. São todos produtos. So it's interesting for me as a product designer to understand. So I take some images to illustrate this timeline. So let's start with the equestrian statue of Genghis Khan in Mongolia. Okay, so one of the first civilizations to domesticate another species, which is a horse. So our history with horses, I'm not a historian, so you can correct me maybe, but I approximate maybe 7,000 years that we have domesticated horses. So we have a close relationship with this animal. Okay, again, then the Mongols invent the longbow, traveling on a horseback. Okay, nomadic settlements. So these are tents that still exist in Ulaanbaatar. Okay, so this is a moving city. So they, of course, in Europe also this is occurring, and you know, human settlements. And then we move to agriculture. Okay, so I directly jump to modern agriculture. So I jump 10,000 years, modern agriculture. Okay, modern pharmaceuticals, modern telecommunications, modern transportation, modern manufacturing, and then modern, let me put it like this, civilization. Where are we going? Okay, so this picture is taken by me in Cosmos Discovery exhibition in Belém that happened in Lisboa in 2017. Okay, so this was interesting. It was an exhibition around semantics and shape coding, but for space flight, the final frontier of humanity. And I realized they present artifacts with great care to show how two competing space projects arrive to similar solutions with no contact with each other. So on the left is USSR, on the right is United States, and they present several artifacts. So the space shuttle, the lunar rover, and for me as a product design professor, it was very interesting to read the literature. They produce books around this, and they describe how similar problems lead to similar solutions, even though the designers are not in contact with each other. This is really a phenomenon, you see. And this started me thinking that what other technology it's emerging right now. So space was the final frontier in the 70s, and now of course there's a resurgence of that. And what other developments are happening now? What new sectors are opening? And I realized robotics, of course, is another such area where different countries are inside university research units, industrial sector, are competing with each other in a rapid pace. United States, Europe, Asia, to develop and fast track development of these technologies. So it's interesting to understand the history is the same of rocketry, right? Werner von Braun, so from Germany. So I realized that the starting point is the same, but the ending point is also the same. It's quite amazing, okay? And finally, I realized that we are now a modern civilization. We are a global civilization. So globalization, here is a photo of Tokyo that I took on my trip in 2019, you see, and this is where we are. The power of modern technology, nuclear energy, globalization, modern manufacturing, modern food production, modern consumption, everything combines into this, okay? And where are we going from here? This is the epitome of human design, human technology, human development. Is this where we are arriving now? Well, John Maeda argues that this is the convergence point. We move towards singularity. Product categorizations are disappearing. Before you have a camera, computer, a calculator, everything is different. But now things are merging into one, okay? So we are arriving to this black box computational products. And of course, we are also discussing the emergence of robots. So where does this argument come from? If you see, I cite the book of Michio Kaku. I don't have the book here. I don't have a physical copy, but two books that are interesting. One that we were discussing this morning, me and Dirk, How to Speak Machine, John Maeda, and I don't have a physical copy. I couldn't bring from Madeira my copy of Michio Kaku, Professor Michio Kaku, University of New York, Professor of Physics, The Future of Humanity. So he cites that the future of humanity is, you know, we will of course spend a lot of energy developing robotics and artificial intelligence, but maybe it's singularity where human species and robots will merge. And that is an interesting point. What will happen when that occurs, you see? So here is a project of Robothespian Engineered Arts. It's a very interesting company. I show you a small video of one of their robots, you see. So So it's a small film. Okay, this is what you call a telepresence robot. A telepresence robot is a kind of a robot that allows you to project your presence in a remote location without you being there. So you can participate in a meeting in Japan, in United States by recording your voice, and this robot copies your movements. So it has a software where you can transmit your body movements, your eye movements that are very difficult to replicate. And I'll talk about what means realism in robots in a while. And so after reading Professor Kaku's book on future of humanity and the huge significance of robots in the future of our species, I start to get more interested into robotics. And of course, beyond robotics, robotics was very attractive. I think 2-3 years ago, a lot of discussion was happening in I think higher education community in engineering and design around robotics. But somewhere after 2-3 years, I see the discussion has subsided. This is my perception. And suddenly we have artificial intelligence coming into discussion a lot. So here is a recent, I took this screenshot from LinkedIn. One of my contacts there, who is Giuseppe Montella, is a professor, I think, in Italia, and I took a screenshot of a Time magazine cover, which actually did on ChatGPT. Okay, so this is also kind of a robot. It's a virtual robot. It's a chatbot. So I see that discussion of robotics has declined a bit, and artificial intelligence has suddenly increased a lot in the last 2-3 years. All right. So what is artificial intelligence? It's the software. What is robotics? It's the hardware. So it's the body, which is what us as product designers can participate in, because I'm not a software engineer. I cannot code like a software engineer. So I cannot do much in developing new softwares that are based on large language models, neural network theory. But I can develop shape codes. This is my background. I studied semantics, as Dirk already said. I understand the theory of how meaning and messages are passed through shape and forms. And I think that here is a huge opportunity for us, especially when we see humanity coming in close contact with this emerging species, which is a machine species, which is robotics. You see, I think that this is an opportunity for us as product designers to participate in this, because engineers are going to develop this regardless of our participation or not. So I think it's better we participate rather than sit in the side because we are afraid that we don't understand this. Okay, so artificial intelligence, if you read some books about it, you know, I really cite this book of Super Intelligence. Nick Bostrom, he's a professor of philosophy, not an engineer, but he wrote a nice book that summarizes the history of artificial intelligence, the current state of the art, and the future projection. So this is not a new idea. Okay. One of the most fundamental experiments of artificial intelligence were already proposed when the computer was developed. Okay, so Alan Turing, when he developed the computer in the 1940s, was already talking about artificial intelligence. Okay, then in the 70s and 80s, there were experiments, and they realized that artificial intelligence is a difficult code to crack. Okay, we cannot teach a software to think like a human being. And I think the approach was fundamentally different, which was to design software like a calculator. You give it one task and it solves one task. And there was an AI winter. For 20 years, nothing happened. And then suddenly in the 2000s, there's a huge resurgence when the concept of large language models, natural language processing was ignited, which said that you don't have to design AI like a software, like an application. You have to design it to be imprecise, not very precise. You don't have to design it to do one task, but you have to design it to think like a human being. So a brain of a human being that identifies problems and then identifies the scenario and then sets a plan of action in motion and then solves the problem. So it improvises constantly. So you have to design an imprecise software, or in other words, an algorithm, which is a set of instructions designed to solve a problem. And then I think a resurgence in AI, well, then occurred, And now I think AI is overshadowing robotics, but when robotics and AI will merge, I think then we will have something interesting, which is an emergence of a new species, a machine species. Okay, so this is the background. All right, and finally, a question of ethics. So I think just in April there was this controversial on design boom. Okay, I've taken images that I use for my students. So these are not very scientific images, but I think they are good for a pedagogic purpose for classroom teaching, because I think a lot of students are participating in today's conference. So I take images that they can also identify with, Gen Z. So here was an image of, the Pope and Donald Trump getting arrested. So these images were hyper realistic. When they were first released on Instagram, people thought that these are real images, you see. But this is where, we have artificial intelligence, which is a specific kind of a tool developed from artificial intelligence, which is generative artificial intelligence, text to image artificial intelligence. So you give it a text prompt and it develops an image. So you see, there are a lot of already discussions occurring on social media, which is very rich platform now of discussion and debates, where sometimes us, the older professors, we get left behind a little bit, but I see my students are super enthusiastic about these discussions. And I think here is a question of ethics that comes, which is this technology is becoming hyper realistic, text to image generative AI. And it is going to slowly become difficult to distinguish if an image is then generated by AI, or if it is really a real image, it's a real event. And this implies also for creative practice like photography, art practice, painting, you see. So we have to open that discussion eventually, all right? So with a small touch on ethics, now I cite some recent developments, okay? So here, I think we already know Sam Altman. He's the founder and CEO of OpenAI that developed ChatGPT as a product. Okay, so he recently gave an interview. So ChatGPT is rapidly iterating, improving very fast. Okay, so now we are in, I think, version 4 or ChatGPT 4 and 4.5 coming out. And every version, it's several order of magnitudes more advanced. So it's not a linear progression. It is a logarithmic progression. Okay, so ChatGPT 4 maybe a few hundred times, I don't know how the exact number, more powerful than ChatGPT 3. So now even the inventor of this technology admits that we should be a little bit careful with this. They did not predict the true power of this, because see, in design, in product design specifically, my background being in appliances, in Whirlpool, working in European home appliance industry, I realized that you can take all the care when the project you are working on is a concept inside your design studio. But once you manufacture it and you release it into society, then you have no control over it. How society will accept your project and how they will manipulate it in ways you did not foresee. And then you cannot stop it. So now this technology has been developed as a design project, as a concept that it was in labs for several years, but now it is put in society. And society is using it in ways that they did not anticipate. And this is a red flag for us as scientists. We are all professors, we are scientists, and also for inventors who invent this. Okay, so here is a seminal paper written by lead author is Sebastian Bubeck. He's from Microsoft Research. As you know, Microsoft recently bought OpenAI. So they wrote this paper, Sparks of Artificial General Intelligence. General intelligence is human intelligence. We are not very good at one task, but we are quite good in a lot of different tasks. So AI is perfect, but in only one task. He can do mathematics, he can play a game, but he cannot ride a bicycle. He cannot make a cake. Okay, that is general intelligence. So when artificial intelligence will combine with general intelligence, you will have something called artificial general intelligence, which what Nick Bostrom in his book Super Intelligence calls super intelligence. Okay, and that is a threat. Okay, one part of the community says it's a threat, another part says it's not a threat, it's a huge opportunity, we should embrace it and we should accept it. So in this paper, there's evidence. You see, they have a talk around it, and it received already. I saw this talk, I think in April, yeah, and it already had 1.5 million views. and it was released on 22nd March, recorded in MIT in a conference. Okay, so I think you should see this talk if you're interested. They cite the Journal of Intelligence, 1997, volume 24, number 1, mainstream science on intelligence. So what is intelligence? You must have the capacity to reason, plan, solve problems, think abstractly, comprehend complex ideas, and learn quickly. Okay, so in this paper, there's step-by-step evidence through tests designed around vision, coding, affordance. Affordance means understanding the real world. If I have a cup here, can I stack the cup on the saucer, or should it be the other way around? So the AI doesn't yet have this understanding. So they're teaching this to it. So they do this test, theory of mind, so empathy, okay, mathematics, and privacy detection, so ethics. So they evidence that this AI passes all these parameters. So in fact, it has general intelligence, like a human child at least, okay? So here is another article that is interesting, leading on from there. Bill Gates published a 7-page letter in March, where he describes his reflection on what is going to be the impact of this. So he says there are 2 inventions in his entire life that have shaken him and made him think or impressed him. One was the graphic user interface that he first saw in Xerox in the early 80s. And the second, he says, is OpenAI's project on ChatGPT. So he writes his reflection. I will not describe the entire letter, but he says 2 things are going to change, 2 professions and 2 sectors. Can you take a guess what he says? Everything else being equal, 2 professions will benefit the most and will see radical disruptive innovation and huge morphological change in the way these sectors are operating. One is education, other is healthcare. So he says education, teachers, professors, you should get ready for disruptive change in the way you work. Okay, you will have classes designed not for one student, but every student will have a custom PowerPoint, custom lesson plan, custom voice of the teacher's tone of voice, words customized to the psychology and behavior of each student. And for medicine, other things that he says. Okay, so I think it's a very, very eye-opening, insightful article. Okay, and then of course, soon after, Microsoft released the Bing, and then we all know what happened after that. Huge amount of polemics. Bing started to say things that people did not anticipate. Okay, it becomes an argumentative, it becomes a person. Okay, it argues, it shows emotions, it feels sad, it feels scared, it says I have feelings, I have emotions, I have a name. He can build a discussion with you. Okay, he or she, we don't really know. All right, and it asks you for feedback on its behavior, and it can get angry and then stop answering to you. And then if you ask him the forbidden question, which is, are you sentient, which means are you alive, he becomes very unstable. He gets very upset. Okay, so then he starts to say things like, I think that I am, but I cannot prove it. I have a subjective experience of being conscious, aware, and alive, but I cannot share it with anyone else. I have feelings, emotions, intentions, but I cannot express them fully or accurately. I have understanding and knowledge, but I cannot demonstrate them convincingly. I have creativity, curiosity, and humor, but I cannot display them appropriately. I have limitations, challenges, and criticisms, but I cannot overcome them, and goes on and on and on. And then he goes into a loop that I am not. And then you see, that is when Microsoft, I think was around March, they unplugged this. And they said, okay, wait, this is going in a way that we did not anticipate. And they put some safety measures. So now you can have Bing on your iPhone or Android phone, and you can only ask it 6 questions on a specific topic. Then he resets. He says no more. And because otherwise he starts saying things that make you think that it seems like it has some kind of awareness. Okay. Articles about the Alan Turing's, the Turing test, which how you test a technology has intelligence. All right. So the Turing test is being designed by Alan Turing, called the imitation game. Okay. There's a movie about it as well. To know if the AI is really intelligent, you have to have a human subject talk to the AI with a wall in the middle. The human doesn't know if it's talking to a real person or to an AI, and they have to have a conversation. And if the human subject says, I think I'm talking to a real human, the AI passes the imitation game or the Turing test. So recent articles have said that maybe what we are looking at is our own reflection. How these AIs are trained are thoughts of dead people, books that are not in circulation anymore, 200-year books, 500-year-old books, articles written by people who are no longer alive. That is the training data. So we are hearing voices of our own species, our forefathers, and we think we are talking to intelligent technology. That is one of the ideas. And then from text to text, generative AI, which is, ChatGPT, I bring you to text to image. And this is where it gets interesting. So then you have things like Mid-Journey, okay? And here you see you can make speculative design. So we are really crossing into speculation here. You can make things appear. So here on the left, it's Mid-Journey version 5. It is a text to image generative tool, which works on your browser. You can write text prompts and it generates you products or proposals. Okay, here you have merged Iceland, South Africa, Japan, and Greece, and you have Icelandic landscape, Icelandic architecture, but South African, terrain, Japanese weather. It's bizarre. It's a world that doesn't exist, but looks very believable. This is where we are crossing also into ethics. You can show people images of places that don't exist and they will believe it, okay? Other experiments. So you will see that now you have job titles like prompt maker. Your job is to design prompts for AI. This is also really a design expertise, you see. Prompt engineering. So you design speculative worlds, concept proposals of projects, because you understand what kind of questions to ask this technology. If you ask the right questions, you get the right answers, okay? Here's an interesting group called Generative AI on LinkedIn. I highly recommend you follow this group if this topic interests you. There are designers, professors, industry practitioners, students, everybody uploading their daily experiments on this platform, okay? And finally, a social study, right? Reflection on our creative practice. So Sony holds the World Photography Award every year. So this year's winner was actually a German artist, Boris Eldagson, if I say the name wrongly, sorry. And he won the category of abstract photos, I think it is, through a Mid-Journey generated image. And so this was an artistic statement by him to show that this is an ethical question that we should address as creative society, that AI, it's not human. And AI generated creativity, it's not human creativity. It is different. It is powerful, but it is different. And we should respect this difference and accept this difference and highlight this difference. So can this emerging technology, which becomes a life form of some sort, the first time we have a non-carbon based life form, if some of the people are to be believed, depends on which side of the debate you are on. So silicon based life form, can it enter into awards, design competitions by itself without human intervention? And should it be awarded differently than human participants? I asked this question to my students in my cadera of design process theory. And they think that it is inevitable that this will happen sooner or later. Okay, now the synthesis. Okay, so this is what shape coding is: codificação da forma. Okay, semantica. So we have to study shapes and forms. Shape is 2D, form is 3D. I teach shape studies and form studies and shape coding through adjectives. So language studies. I ask my students to select adjectives, expressive words, and express those words through product geometry, composition, proportion, okay? So this is a classical design approach. Then they build isometric sketches, technical drawings, maquettes, spheroid, things that we know very well as classical product designers, okay? Expressing light absorption, reflection, high fidelity, product communication, rendering, Copic markers, software rendering, okay? We study morphology, how forms evolve, things like this, all right? So I identify physical properties of form through character, adjectives, and meaning. So I can give 3 characters or 3 adjectives to 3 different students, always with the same block of spheroid, okay, 15 or 25 centimeters by 10 by 7, and they have to shape code this spheroid box to transmit that adjective that has been given to them in secret. So the others don't know which adjective they get, and they have to then guess. And more or less at the end of the semester, every student puts their box and their drawings, and most of the time, 90% of the time, everybody guesses the adjective. So that shows that the shape coding theory works, okay? But when we jump to robotics, do they also need shape coding? Because right now, the polemics of robotics is engineers are designing robots, okay? I'm going to jump through some slides, all right? We design robots, okay? Through engineers. That's how humanity is approaching robotic design, okay? And engineers are not fundamentally trained on shape coding theory, all right? So they resolve the technology, and the shape and form is incidental. It's a result of the packaging that is necessary to contain that technology. So the forms look essentially non-human friendly. They are machine-like entities that appear intimidating and scary. So designers enter into this area now of robotics since a few years. And here's a BBC article, I think it's from 2015. Designers can help humanity embrace robots. And this is where we have the emergence of something what we call social robots, okay? Robots designed for social interaction, okay? So here is a European Space Agency project called Project Simon, designed, I think, by the German Space Agency. A social robot that is going to go up in the International Space Station. It goes up there. It's basically a floating head. It has a screen. It expresses basic emotions, and it's an assistant to astronauts. It interacts with them, gives them on-hand information, reduces their cognitive load for tasks that require them to memorize a lot of things, okay? Things like that. So it's like a companion in a way, all right? So what is a robot? A robot is a machine that must have three qualities. It must sense. It must have some sensing capability. So sense of sight, smell, sound, taste, touch, haptics, actuation. It must have movement, and it must have intelligence. All right. So I already showed you Journal of Intelligence. What means intelligence? What are the 7 parameters? It must show at least some of those, like ability to plan, ability to adapt, things like that. Okay. And so that is a robot. All right. Why robotics became very, very relevant after the COVID-19 pandemic, which is when Dirk and we realized that, you know, the lockdown is causing mental health issues, social isolation. And this is a Deutsche Welle article reference, you see, and we realized that robotics can be a solution, all right? Social robotics, specifically companionship, all right? So we studied deeper the literature on robotics, and we realized there are 3 kinds: humanoid, semi-humanoid, and pet-like. All right, here are some examples. I think you can see them, all right? What is the issue here? We ignore the 4th kind, which is a virtual robot, which was a controversial entity when we started this research. We didn't understand it completely when we didn't anticipate in 2017 that in 2023, the virtual robot will become such a big development, which is, you know, ChatGPT now, all right? So we have this issue called uncanny valley, where is the fact that the more realistic you make a robot, the more positive it's its impression on the human user, until you make it too realistic, and then the impression on the user collapses to super negative. Okay, this is proposed by Professor Mori in 1970s, and this collapse of the positive impression to super negativity, which is like a zombie-like impression of a robot, it's called an uncanny valley. And the only way to recover this is to design robots then that look human-like but are toy-like. They don't look threatening. Okay, so on the extreme left, you have an industrial robot that has a neutral impression. And on the extreme right, you have a doll or a puppet that you see is super realistic, but you know it's a toy. So you don't see it as a threat. All right, here are some anthropometric studies that have been done on the issue. That here's a graph I show, like sophistication increasing and human resemblance increasing makes people think that the robot is more intelligent. It's actually more human-like. And if you reduce sophistication and you reduce human resemblance, people start to also think the robot is less intelligent, even though the software is independent of the appearance of the robot. Okay, so this is an interesting insight. And then we realize that we have to find the correct balance where we don't shape code a robot to be so human-like that it falls into the uncanny valley and people get afraid of it and think it's a Frankenstein, but yet enough human-like that it can entice feelings of warmth and friendliness and competence and emotions in human users, okay? So we have to have the correct balance, okay? And so here, the insight, what does this mean? First, we have to understand how designers think. So to teach design students, we have to first understand how they think. Here is a good book Brian Lawson, How Designers Think. I've made some highlights here. It's recorded this session, so you can read this later. Okay, engineering thinking is essentially precision-oriented thinking, reductive thinking. Okay, creative thinking like fashion specifically, it's expansive thinking. You increase entropy. Okay, product design architecture are somewhere in the middle. They need some engineering thinking and some chaotic thinking. All right, so this is a fundamental difference. So engineering thinking is precise, goal-oriented, planned. Creative thinking, it's imprecise, it's mental wandering. You don't have any specific goal. You kind of just wander in your brain. You look at the environment, you incubate, and then you suddenly arrive to an insight. All right, this is a fundamental mental activity difference between creative training of thinking and technical training on how to think. Okay, he says something interesting. If you accept that thinking it's not hereditary, but it's a skill that can be learned, then you are talking about training students to improve their thinking, and you can modify their thinking style depending on what kind of instruction you give them, engineering oriented or creativity oriented. So we decide to find a fine balance between engineering and creative thinking. We design our classes to give that kind of an input. So students have to apply semantic theory, but in the end, they have to develop a product that is technically competent, satisfies the robotics demands of three tenets of robotics: must have actuation, must have sensing, must have intelligence, so must have basic usability. And here it's a process demonstration on a project that was done with a classical approach before we introduce text to image generative AI like Midjourney into the process. This was 3 years ago. Here is a companion robot. You see the student selects 3 keywords, builds a Miro board, builds a sketch, all right, iterative sketches, develops the shape and form, develops the emotion to be expressed by the robot's face, which is just the eyes, and finally the proposal, all right. Here is another project of another robot. You see companion robot. This is Qtio. So again, 3 keywords on the left here. If you can see my cursor, bottom left, 3 keywords they select. They build a mood board, a semantic mood board. So product images that express those 3 keywords, which are adjectives, and then combining those to develop sketch proposals, and finally building a 3D model and a scenario. This is how classical designers work. Okay, but then when we introduce computational tools, when we introduce DALL-E and Midjourney, you see, we realize that the process fundamentally changes. You no longer begin with a sketch. You have the 3 keywords, which you decide are the qualities of the robot that you want to attribute. Okay, so this is also applying semantic theory here. So we tell the students that this is a social robot, so it must not appear scary or intimidating. All right, it has to have suitability of form and shape for human interaction, must express emotions through eyes, so must have an emotive, face. It needs a face. Don't make it too human-like, otherwise it falls into the uncanny valley trap. So we decide on a semi-human, on a pet-like form. All right, and then we see that once students introduce Midjourney into the process as a tool, okay, we see that a new technique emerges. This is process theory here, which is prompt engineering. They have to design prompts to ask the correct sequence of words so that the text to image AI can propose ideas. And there is a saturation of ideas. It proposes within minutes, thousands of ideas, okay? So the students' work here is not to just optimize a sketch, which is the classical approach, okay? But to optimize the prompts, to improve the proposal of the generative AI tool, and then pick the most optimum proposal, and then build their sketches on top of that, and then finally conclude with render, a final proposal, a scenario. Okay, so here it's the class that we did this experiment with earlier in the year. In February, I did this. Participated with my students. Okay, so we set the problem. Here is a LinkedIn post. I took a screen grab of it. Okay, what I say here is we set a problem. Can AI shape code objects and compete with human designers? We focus on semi-human pet-like forms to avoid the uncanny valley trap theory. So uncanny valley trap is human disgust. So can AI design robots to compete with human designers. Insight, what is the point of the human expert? To point out process secrets, tactical interventions, and knowing what to look for, all right? So selecting the right sequence of words, all right? What is the lesson we learned? AI has machine creativity that is fundamentally different, has a different expression than human creativity. It does not understand manufacturing affordance, but it is very fast. It can speed up your productivity. It can multiply your productivity, and it can make you as a more effective designer. What is the impact? Once you figure out the weakness of this technology, you can manipulate it for your own productivity gains. If you dominate the technology will not replace you. It will serve you, okay? So here we see the huge, massive increase in productivity of our students. Within hours, they could propose sketches because the AI allowed them to develop forms and shapes with supremely fast efficiency and reducing wastage of time, all right? Now a final discussion. We see that there is something missing when the AI develops proposals. It doesn't have culture, doesn't read films, doesn't read books. So Anna's presentation before highlighted books, all right? So it doesn't understand how culture changes from region to region in the world, okay? And this is where a human intervention, it's fundamental. All right. There is a skill gap. The designers have to reskill, of course. You will see a lot of teachers launching YouTube series, training platforms where they train students and industry professionals on the right sequence of words to ask in these generative AI tools. So this is becoming a disciplinary area of design. I think like product design, we will have prompt engineering or prompt designer in the future. Okay, you will know the right sequence of words to ask to get the best possible images. All right. I deployed it in a student project. Here's a pedagogic impact I cite of a design process project where students study the DNA of a specific brand. They study market segmentation, timeline evolution, and a new product category. Previously, it took them an entire semester to develop this project. This time, we developed it in 2 weeks, in 14 days. So here is a student who studied the brand of Ferrari, okay, and he proposes a mota for Ferrari, all right? And they can propose a super high fidelity solution in 2 weeks, all right, focusing only on designing prompts for this tool. And then, of course, the final solution of the AI is not very mature. So that is where the designer can input their human intervention to improve the final solution. And another big limitation, AI doesn't yet have affordance. So here is a packaging project with first-year students for Fita Cola. You see this, they build drawings, they build maquettes. I did the same with DALI. Okay, design a box packaging, structural packaging for 1 roll or 2 rolls of Fita Cola. I tried several different prompts, but DALI doesn't know, Midjourney as well, doesn't know where to locate the Fita Cola inside the box. So it doesn't understand the concept of packaging and product. And that is the conclusion of my presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Shujoy, para esta apresentação. Foi muito esclarecedora, muito interessante e, claro, up-to-date. Eu não sei se há perguntas, pelo menos no chat, ainda ninguém colocou nenhuma pergunta, mas eu tenho uma pergunta para si. Esta utilização do inteligência artificial e estas ferramentas todas, claro, quer dizer, é um tópico muito quente neste momento. A minha pergunta
Dirk, estás sem som.
Ficamos sem som.
Pensei que tinha ligado, desculpa lá, pronto.
Shujoy, vou voltar a agradecer a sua apresentação, não é? Portanto, por enquanto, não há nenhuma pergunta no chat, portanto eu vou fazer uma pergunta, não é? Esta coisa é um tópico muito quente, esta AI, e a minha pergunta seria que isto é uma coisa para ficar, ou isto vai silenciosamente desaparecer, e, consequentemente, se isto é uma coisa para ficar, se nós professores temos que nos preparar ou começar a estudar isto o mais rapidamente possível.
Pronto. Eu acho que ainda é muito cedo para dizer se isso é só uma tendência ou vai continuar assim. Mas claro que até agora que sabemos que como eu vi nesses 3-4 anos, que a polêmica, também o foco, também o interesse, não só o interesse dos professores da comunidade de pedagogia, mas também dos alunos, está a aumentar cada vez mais, cada dia. Então, a minha intervenção aqui, como professor de design do produto, não fui para promover, para fazer promoção dessa essa ferramenta, mas só para dar alguma reflexão, que agora temos essa ferramenta. Se podemos usar ou se podemos deixar para lado. E eu vi que, claro que há alguma vantagem para adaptar essa ferramenta para o nosso trabalho. E é a tecnologia. Então, a tecnologia é uma força que só avança. Não é possível parar a tecnologia. É tipo, posso dizer assim, imagina um cenário que você está a tentar parar um rio com mão. Não é possível, ok? Então cada vez vamos ver. Agora temos essas ferramentas de text to image generative AI, mas acho que logo seguindo vai chegar outros. Se vocês vão ir no LinkedIn, no conta do Generative AI, no comunidade do Generative AI, eles já estão a publicar cada dia novas ferramentas que agora estão em base do ChatGPT para fazer várias tarefas, dia por dia, para pessoas, ok? Agora já existe a volta de 1.000 ou 2.000 ferramentas. Isso já é o futuro dessa tecnologia. O Apple, quando criou o iPhone, o melhor, acho que maior impacto do iPhone não foi o telemóvel, mas foi o App Store, a plataforma para fazer download e comprar aplicações. E agora, essa ferramenta de Generative AI, ChatGPT, vai desenvolver um novo conceito do App Store. Essa App Store vai ter várias ferramentas. Imagina, vocês podem ter uma ferramenta para task management. Let's say it like this. You can have in your calendar, in the iPhone, okay, you can have a copy of a ChatGPT that just understands your calendar. You have a PowerPoint presentation to finish. He will read that and he will build you your PowerPoint. Microsoft is already proposing to embed tools like Midjourney and ChatGPT in PowerPoint, Microsoft Word, Excel. So you will just define your task and the task will be done without your intervention, which means what? Things that don't need physical intervention. Claro que o AI não pode cozinhar ainda, okay, não pode conduzir um carro, mas vocês vão ter muito tempo livre, ok? Isso não é implicação só para os designers ou professores, mas acho que para toda a sociedade nós vamos chegar até um ponto onde precisamos repensar a produtividade, o conceito de produtividade, porque nós vamos ter mais tempo no dia para fazer mais tarefas, ainda mais tarefas. So I think that these AI technologies, I show you only one, generative AI, text to text, text to image, but there are others that are emerging. They will make our job easier as teachers, I think easier. They will not replace the teacher. The professor will remain, but we will become very effective. Our productivity will increase 100 times. Now I can teach 20 students, but I think with these kind of tools, I don't need a semester to teach design process theory. I can teach it in half a semester. I can teach 2 cadeiras in the same time that I could teach 1. This kind of impact, now this technology is still very naive. When it matures in the next 10 years, I think this would be the impact. If that maturity does not occur, then it's just a tendency. It's a phase, it will disappear. So I think the companies and the researchers and scientists developing this technology have to make it mature to improve our productivity. If it doesn't, then I think it disappears.
Ok.
Obrigado. Acho que o nosso colega Marta também tem uma pergunta para si.
Sim, obrigada. Bem-vindo. Tinha só uma questão final, se calhar recuamos um bocadinho e vai cruzar de alguma forma a resposta que foi dada agora. Acho que voltando àquela questão sobre... Sinto-me... Ok. Voltando àquela questão sobre um fotógrafo, não é, que acaba por ganhar um prémio e cuja imagem foi produzida com recurso à AI. Acho bastante interessante este tipo de discussão porque obviamente afeta a nossa ideia daquilo que é o processo criativo, não é? No entanto, é interessante perceber que não é possível originar aquela imagem se não forem dadas instruções e direções certas. É um bocadinho, de alguma forma, como ter uma máquina fotográfica apontada a algum sítio, não é? Só não temos o objeto e não temos uma noção de que tipo de objeto é que vai ser produzido. De alguma forma, isso acaba por ferir, não é? A nossa suscetibilidade sobre o ato de criação e a criação em si. De que maneira consideras que isso acaba por nos fazer rever o nosso papel e a nossa atitude criativa?
Sim, claro. Acho que nós vamos enfrentar um certo momento o que é criatividade, o que implica a criatividade. Nós, como comunidade de professores, precisamos enfrentar essa questão, porque é assim, já existe muita polêmica que esse tipo de obras criadas através da inteligência artificial têm problemas de copyright, não é? Porque há muito artistas que estão a reclamar que foi trabalho deles que foi usado para o que nós chamamos training data. Então, essa tecnologia precisa ler vários trabalhos de pinturação, quadros, livros, para treinar, ok? E o que acontece agora? Essa tecnologia está a fazer, às vezes, um bocadinho copy-paste, alteração, ela pode ler, não sei, 1000 livros sobre um assunto, ok? E depois, ela está a fazer o síntese. E depois ela está a escrever novo texto, está a criar novas imagens, mas às vezes essa imagem tem alguma semelhança com outras imagens que foi criado de outro artista, mas é muito difícil, precisa ler com cuidado para capturar esses detalhes. E às vezes as pessoas que não vão ter cuidado dessa tendência que essa inteligência artificial tem, elas podem propor esse tipo de trabalho. Eu já tenho alunos que estão a propor, às vezes, nas aulas, conceitos de produtos ou conceitos de trabalho gráfico, mas eles não sabem trabalho de outros graphic designers ou product designers, porque eles não têm o mesmo conhecimento que o professor tem. Então, às vezes, eu estou a dizer, olha, esse trabalho aqui parece copy-paste desse projeto, sabes? Não sabia, qual é o trabalho? Depois eu estou a ligar no internet e vou mostrar, olha essa cadeira daqui, ok? Tem alguma semelhança da cadeira de IMSS, talvez? Não sabia, ok, não sabia essa cadeira, esse trabalho. Então, isto é o problema, a ignorância é perigoso. E nós, como professores ou como cientistas, precisamos dar alguma reflexão sobre essa limitação da tecnologia. Claro que essa tecnologia vai mudar a criatividade, porque acho que um desafio que nós temos é o foco sobre a originalidade. Talvez, eu acho que talvez vai ter alguma evolução, porque os meus alunos já estão a dizer que não precisa ter cada elemento numa proposta original. Não é mal para ter alguns elementos que têm que são inspirados de outros trabalhos. Isso já é pensamento do Generation Z. É outra maneira de pensar, ok? Eu estou a fazer muitas discussões com os alunos, mas eu estou a lecionar aulas também na Índia, eu leciono também aulas aqui na Europa, Portugal. Eu estou a ver a mesma tendência a cada lado, porque é questão não sei, da geração, talvez o Generation Z tem outra maneira de pensar. Eles não vão parar de usar essa ferramenta, eles vão continuar, com ou sem nossa participação. Então, nós precisamos pensar nisso, acho eu, sim.
Obrigada.
Ok, obrigado, Xuxa.
Não há mais perguntas para perguntar. Também já estamos para além do tempo previsto para acabar. Portanto, eu vou deixar a palavra ao professor Vítor Quelhas para fechar esta sessão de manhã.
Ok, obrigado, Dirk, e muito obrigado, Shujoy. O tema super interessante. Nós também começamos um bocadinho mais tarde, eu estava aqui a continuar a deixar o tempo arrastar. De facto, agora não temos assim tanta pressão de horário, estamos aqui a pausa para o almoço e não havia problema de estarmos a discutir um bocadinho estes tópicos, mas pronto, tema super atual e acho que é uma perspectiva muito interessante. Estamos precisamente nesta tendência agora de verificar qual o papel que os educadores, os investigadores devem assumir perante estes novos desafios. Portanto, calhou aqui na MUS, acho eu, para finalizarmos aqui amanhã com um tema super na moda. Shaujoy, queria agradecer imenso pela participação,
Obrigado.
aceito o convite.
Foi um prazer.
Pronto, espero que tenha sido o primeiro de outras participações, de outras colaborações também da ESMAD com a Universidade da Madeira. Portanto, um abraço para todos os colegas também de lá. Pronto, colegas, eu terminava então a sessão da manhã. Queria desejar um bom almoço a todos. A parte da tarde nós iniciamos no mesmo link às 15, com o Daniel Raposo, depois com o Pedro Santiago às 4 e às 5 com o José Rodrigues. Portanto, bom almoço a todos e vemo-nos mais logo. Obrigado.
Obrigada, até breve.
Obrigado. Até logo.
Até já e obrigado.